Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're tuning in, it's because you want to cut straight through the noise and get a read on exactly what's unfolding on the global stage right now. We are looking at an incredibly complex, multi-front geopolitical standoff involving the United States, Iran, Israel, and several key proxy forces. The leverage points here are deeply interconnected, the rhetoric is just incredibly high, and the economic implications are truly global. We're going to unpack this entire situation methodically, using the source material so you can clearly understand how the pieces on this massive geopolitical chessboard are moving. Okay, let's dive right into this. The rhetoric at the center of this dispute, it is literally explosive. Just look at the stark warning from President Donald Trump to Iranian officials regarding the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We're impartially looking at a situation here where the threat of total national destruction is being used as a very active, highly public negotiating tactic. So how on earth did we arrive at a point where international shipping, nuclear negotiations, and regional proxy wars are all colliding at the exact same time? Well, to make sense of this current crisis, we really need to map out the different arenas where this pressure is being applied. Because, in modern geopolitics, conflicts rarely happen on just a single contained battlefield anymore. A fired missile in the Levant can instantly spike insurance premiums for cargo ships in the Gulf, which then puts the squeeze on diplomats sitting in a conference room in Europe. The whole shebang is deeply intertwined. Every move in one arena acts as a major point of leverage in another.
So, we're going to break this explainer down into 4 distinct fronts today. 1. The Swiss peace talks. 2. The Strait of Hormuz standoff. 3. The Israel-Hezbollah proxy war. And 4. The 60-day ultimatum. All right, let's start with front number 1, the Swiss peace talks, diplomacy in Lucerne.
We're starting right at the negotiating table in Lucerne. This is where high-level US and Iranian interests are converging directly, and you've got leaders from Qatar and Pakistan at the table too. What we're witnessing here is honestly a textbook, high-stakes, good cop, bad cop dynamic playing out in real time. Vice President J.D. Vance is officially presenting the carrot, right? He's offering Iran a fundamentally different, historic, normalized relationship with the West if they just abandon their nuclear ambitions. But simultaneously, President Trump is swinging a massive stick, issuing these aggressive ultimatums to Iranian officials, basically warning them to shape up or face utter destruction. It's a highly calculated dual-pronged squeeze meant to completely box in the negotiations.
But as you'd expect, the pushback from the other side of the table is just as firm. The Iranian president has explicitly stated that Iran maintains the absolute right to uranium enrichment. They are flatly refusing to surrender unconditionally, arguing that the U.S. has done a complete 180 in its demands. To really understand why Iran is reacting this way, you kind of have to look at how drastically the U.S. posture has shifted from previous diplomatic norms. From the Iranian perspective, this sudden shift in Washington's baseline demands makes unconditional surrender an absolute non-starter. And that right there is the central friction point at the diplomatic table.
Now, what's really fascinating about this dynamic is the specific nuance of the nuclear stakes they're actually negotiating. The real crux of the issue lies in the enrichment levels. While everyone's spotlight is heavily focused on Iran's highly enriched uranium, which currently sits at around 60%, the U.S. administration is actually making a highly strategic concession. They are leaving the door open for a potential future civilian enrichment program down the line. So it's not actually about a blanket denial of all nuclear capability forever to send the country back to the Stone Age. It's about demanding strict, verifiable compliance right now, backed up by those severe military threats we just talked about. Moving on to front number 2. The Strait of Hormuz standoff, the massive economic choke point. Now, this standoff isn't just happening in quiet Swiss conference rooms, obviously. It is threatening open waters. Let's shift our focus over to the economic choke point that serves as Iran's primary point of leverage. The whole catalyst for this current waterway tension is directly linked back to the battlefield. Because Iran has faced some really significant setbacks on the ground, their Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps threatened to just close the Strait of Hormuz. And specifically, they made this threat in direct response to Israeli military strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. You see how the proxy conflict immediately triggers the economic threat? It's all connected. To really grasp why closing the strait is such a massive threat, you just need to look at this number right here, 19 million. That is the number of barrels of crude oil that exit the Persian Gulf in a single day. To put that into perspective, if the Strait of Hormuz is choked off, it doesn't just hurt some distant governments. It immediately ripples out to global energy markets. We're talking halted supply chains, spiked inflation, and a direct hit to everyday citizens right at the gas pump.
The global economic stakes of this specific waterway being blocked are, frankly, staggering.
So in response to the IRGC's threats, the U.S. has outlined a very specific counter-leverage plan. If Iran even attempts a blockade, the U.S. isn't just threatening to reopen it, no. They are threatening a complete military takeover of the waterway. The administration's stated goal is to act as the guardian angel of the strait in the broader Middle East. That's an aggressive shift from a posture of passive observation to active, direct military control of the region's shipping lanes.
But hey, this protection isn't free. In a move that treats global security almost like a commercial transaction, President Trump proposed a 20% toll on oil passing through the U.S. secured strait. It is an unprecedented, concrete price tag. It signals to both Iran and global allies that U.S. military cover of this international choke point is now going to come at a heavy, tangible premium. Honestly, it adds this fascinating transactional layer to traditional military deterrence.
All right, on to front number 3, the Israel-Hezbollah front, the complicating proxy war.
This brings us to the active war zone in the Levant, which is the direct catalyst threatening the stability of those Swiss peace talks we mentioned. Let's quickly walk through the recent escalation step by step. Over a recent weekend, 5 Israeli Defense Force soldiers were killed by Hezbollah. In the following days, Israel responded with a heavy series of airstrikes across southern Lebanon. As of right now, Israeli President Herzog has publicly promised that Israel has absolutely no territorial ambitions in Lebanon, indicating they fully plan to return the land to displaced Lebanese citizens once the conflict concludes.
So, the crucial point here is how Washington views this proxy conflict. According to the source material, President Trump hasn't held back his frustration with Israel's current operational methods against Hezbollah. He has openly criticized the tactic of leveling civilian infrastructure, basically arguing that the focus should be on precise, on-the-ground targeting of combatants rather than simply knocking down entire buildings. And because of this friction, the U.S. administration is floating an alternative that has absolutely stunned many geopolitical analysts, empowering Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to fight Hezbollah in Lebanon. Yeah, you heard that right. It is a highly controversial pivot, banking on the logic that Assad would execute a traditional boots-on-the-ground campaign without all that collateral infrastructure damage we're currently seeing. It's just a remarkable example of how surprising geopolitical alliances can become when immediate tactical goals align. Meanwhile, if we look slightly further south at Gaza, the U.S. assessment is that Hamas is currently causing fewer problems, which is allowing a ceasefire process to play out. Why does this matter for the big picture? Well, because it allows the U.S. to maintain its absolute, undivided focus on Iran. The administration firmly believes that securing a deal with Iran is the ultimate linchpin here. They essentially view the regional proxy groups as the symptoms and Iran as the underlying disease. If Iran is neutralized, Washington assesses that the rest of these regional issues will just naturally fall right into place. And finally, front number 4, the 60-day ultimatum, the ticking clock. So, how do all these moving parts, the Swiss negotiations, the economic threats in the Gulf, and the active proxy wars, actually culminate? Well, it all comes down to a ticking clock. Right now, this highly fragile situation is held together by a 60-day memorandum of understanding. Now, make no mistake, this is not a finalized peace deal, not at all. It is merely a temporary ceasefire, a tight 60-day window strictly intended for hammering out the granular details of Iran's nuclear capabilities. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate leverage the U.S. is holding over these negotiations. The U.S. administration is treating this 60-day window strictly as an option, and, as we all know, options expire. By reserving the absolute right to walk away or escalate once the clock runs out, Washington is keeping the sword of Damocles hovering right over the negotiating table. Whether the outcome is a historic diplomatic breakthrough or a massive military escalation, both paths remain firmly open. We've looked at the intense good cop, bad cop diplomacy. We've seen the 19 million barrels of oil at risk and the aggressive ultimatums being traded back and forth. The pieces on this geopolitical chessboard are locked in a seriously high-stakes standoff. So, what does this all mean? With the 60-day clock ticking down right now, will the diplomatic table in Switzerland hold, or will the Strait of Hormuz become the next active frontline? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and be sure to keep your eyes on the board.